This video is brought to you by Bespoke Post. And to get you up to speed, Bespoke Post is a monthly membership club delivering boxes of quality goods from normally under-the-radar brands that every month get new things added like outdoor gear, barware, home and kitchen goods, clothing, and a lot more based on your preferences when you make an account. It's free to join and you can skip a month or cancel anytime if it doesn't fit your budget. Every box sent directly to your door has around $70 worth of goods inside, but you're only paying a fraction of the actual value. And to make sure you absolutely get what you want, you can preview your box before it's shipped and then decide to keep what you get or swap it with a different one, or skip the month completely if it doesn't tickle your fancy this time. I recommend the Weekend, or a heavy-duty travel bag that's perfect for outdoors. I'm actually planning a trip to Philly in the coming weeks for a project, so this makes for the perfect carry-on. Yeah, I think I can pack that. This is also something you can get, the Parlor box. I love a good drink, and the Parlor set comes with a set of glasses, a drinking tray, and a nice whiskey bottle to complement your homely aesthetic. Just make sure you're drinking a bourbon that doesn't taste like motor oil. So to get 20% off your first box, click the link in the description below and enter the checkout code Somecallmejohnny20, or go to bespokepost.com/Somecallmejohnny20 to get you started on your new Bespoke Post membership. And once again, a thanks to them for sponsoring this channel, and thank you, the viewer, for helping support this channel as always. Now let's continue on with the show. While a financial success in the long term, Resident Evil 6 would not become the immediate juggernaut Capcom was hoping it would be in the opening months of release. And after a few negatively received spin-offs that, like Resident Evil 6, was focused more on over-the-top action rather than delivering scares and suspense, the exception to these being Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2, Capcom decided it was time to take a step back and reevaluate how they could take the series forward by going backwards, basically. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. And yes, if you're wondering, in Japan it's called Biohazard 7 Resident Evil. Love the fun little interplay they had with the naming convention here this time. This will be the first game to incorporate Capcom's new RE engine, giving the developers the means to create the game to their specific vision in environmental design. To cover this really quick, it was a job well done if you ask me, because this game has some damn good environments and aesthetic that I think won't be aging anytime soon. Maybe outside of some of the food textures. And look, even the news anchor saw an upgrade, I swear, looks just like real life. But no, the character models and animations are great too, and to really put emphasis on the first person perspective, everything, even cutscenes, are done in real time. Like, there's no transitions to cinematics or anything like that. Everything happens in front of your face until the credits roll. But unlike Resident Evil 6, where these felt more like poorly implemented ambushes to unsuspecting players, leading to unfair deaths and all that, Resident Evil 7 handles them in a way where they give enough time to let the player breathe before forcing them to handle the suddenly dire predicament. My only two sour points would be Mia, the main protagonist's girlfriend of this game, and Evelyn, the main antagonist. Mia, I know she's been through a lot and seen some shit, but this bug-eyed glare she's rocking here doesn't seem natural at all. Evelyn gets some gnarly facial scrunching from time to time. I blur my eyes and I swear she looks like Chucky. And I can see and hear Brad Dourif coming out of her voice.
How's it hanging, Phil?
The RE engine also gave the developers an easier time incorporating VR elements that wasn't as easy to achieve with previous third-party engines. Yeah, despite the game playing just fine normally, and for the record I'm playing the PC version for this. I know I showed my PS4 copy in the last video. I bought it twice, I like this game. Anyway, despite the game playing just fine normally, there was a sizable push for the game's VR integration, given the decision to make the game first person. Now that decision, I remember that being a point of contention for some. I didn't find it any different than when the series transitioned from the static third-person camera to the over-the-shoulder view, but I think what happened is that the FPS camera only made fans think of the franchise as the series was not too long ago trying so hard to be, so it wasn't love at first sight. However, I figured the FPS approach could potentially make the game's tension and atmosphere that more immersive and thrilling. You know, I've seen what games like Amnesia and Outlast could do. I've seen the kind of praise that Silent Hill demo got before Konami went and fucked it in the ass. I get the uncertainty, but I think this was a good decision at the end of the day. There are times where I feel the first person is a hindrance, mainly centering on combat and avoiding confrontation. You can't juke and jive past things as you could in other games, or at least it isn't as easy to gauge your exact positioning to slip by whatever's chasing you. But that's just the thing. Whenever you got something on your tail, whether it's one of the many moldy creatures or someone like Jack Baker, essentially this game's Mr. X or Nemesis, not being able to see where they are at all times and when they're making a beeline for you, that shit is terrifying in the first person. And it didn't help that for this recording I was wearing headphones during the whole thing, so those scare chords hit extra hard, and that led me to getting a genuine jump scare from time to time. It's been a few years since I last played this, so I kind of forgot where they were.
I told you to stay out of here!
I imagine this would be enhanced for VR. Now, I never really cared for it, but I know from those that have experienced this with a proper VR headset, have claimed that it's an entirely different beast regarding scares and tensions, so if for some reason Resident Evil 7 didn't make you piss your pants normally, perhaps the VR version can change your mind. Hard to say for me. I don't plan on getting a VR headset anytime soon, and if I would get one, it's not for Resident Evil 7, it'd be for RE4. And who knows, maybe Salazar would actually punch me in the cock now. Resident Evil 7's entire MO was to bring the franchise back to square one. In some way, you can even look at RE7 as a sort of soft reboot of the series, because not only was the game structure going back to the classic format, but the plot and characters are almost completely detached from the series' continuity. The ending might confuse you, but you could feasibly start with this game with no prior knowledge of the franchise beforehand, and not really miss a beat, I think. Resident Evil 7 puts us in control of Ethan Winters, a man who finds himself heading to Dulce, Louisiana after receiving a video from his long-thought dead girlfriend Mia, wanting to see if she's truly alive and too dumb to turn around and contact the police the moment he notices that Mia's location is looking kind of fucked. Ethan finds himself inside the confines of the Baker household, where he finds Mia shortly after, who attacks Ethan like a woman possessed, but it's clear she's not entirely in control of her actions, internally struggling with whatever is causing her to go sicko. One chopped off arm and an axe to the neck later, Ethan manages to subdue Mia, but is then unexpectedly ambushed by Jack Baker, father of the Baker family. Ethan awakens to the worst bed and breakfast ever, where he's greeted by the rest of the Baker family, Lucas, Marguerite, and what looks to be Spider-Man's Aunt May. Ethan isn't a fan of the main menu and tries to find the means to escape the household, eventually getting assistance from a woman over the phone named Zoe, the daughter of Jack Baker, that promises to help Ethan escape if she can help him synthesize a cure for the infection that's running rampant. That infection being the mold that's running amok through the surrounding area, and this ain't your standard household mold, though the Bakers do deserve it considering they have a basement in Louisiana. But no, this mold stems from the story's BOW, Evelyn, a weapon produced by Mia and her scientific buddies a few years ago that takes the form of a little girl to lure unsuspecting saps before converting them into moldy abominations. Evelyn, in some sick development later, wished to have a family, and after causing the ship that was holding her to crash in the swamplands of Louisiana, converted the Bakers to her slaves after they believed they were just rescuing the lost girl from the crash site. Anyone under Evelyn's influence can be subjected to hallucinations. If you see the young girl, you're in for a bad time. Isn't that right, Chucky? Zoe was affected by Evelyn's influence, but has managed to keep a cool head so far, unlike the rest of her family who... Yeah. So it's a matter of survival, as Ethan not only has to evade the Bakers and whatever they throw at him, but find the necessary ingredients to make that cure for Zoe and Mia, who unsurprisingly has also been infected, explaining that little chainsaw episode she was experiencing during the game's intro. Through 2 derelict houses, a sweet rave party courtesy of Lucas, and an unhealthy amount of moist dank, Ethan confronts the Bakers one by one using nothing but his incredible determination and willpower to overcome the odds. He manages to create the cure, but thanks to some last-minute interference by a mutated Jack, he's left with only 1 dose. Though you're given the choice to cure either Mia or Zoe, you're meant to save Mia, since saving Zoe has immediate ramifications that leads to the bad ending. Though don't worry, Zoe will get her moment in the sun later. Though the Bakers are dealt with, except for Lucas, who managed to escape for the time being, start counting those days, you ghoulish prick, there's still the matter of Evelyn, who splits Ethan and Mia up for a time, and starts laying on the psychological torment thick, in a boat sequence that, after the first playthrough, really overstays its welcome. It serves to exposit Evelyn's backstory and how she was being voyaged away from potential threats looking to take Evelyn for their own evil needs, but she would create total chaos and wreck the boat, kickstarting the events of the game. I say it overstays its welcome because you're in control of Mia for the first part, who is completely naked, no weapons, no items. You're meant to sneak around the mold creatures and solve puzzles, breaking up the game's otherwise smooth pace. It's like the Sherry sequence of RE2, but like 3 times as long. She does get a machine gun and remote bombs later, but you only have like 10-15 minutes left in this sequence and you wish you had it earlier. But Mia manages to rescue Ethan from Evelyn's clutches, staying behind to hold off Evelyn for a bit. Oh, I'm guessing that cure didn't work. Well, she gives Ethan enough time to reach Evelyn's actual location, the Baker household, for Evelyn was the old grandma the entire time, which is not at all surprising. That was something I called like hour 1. I'm serious, the first time I played this, the moment I saw her wrinkly ass pop up with no explanation, I was like, her? She's the actual Evelyn, and I was right. Though she was just a little girl a few years prior, her unstable genetic makeup has caused her to rapidly age and deteriorate into the Crypt Keeper you see before you. But Evelyn won't go down without a fight and transforms into a huge monstrosity after being injected with the toxin needed to kill her. But Ethan's perseverance and the surprise return of Chris Redfield, looking more like a digitally de-aged Tim Roth for some reason, and is now working for Umbrella? Evelyn is stopped once and for all, with Ethan and Mia living to see another day, escaping via helicopter that I hope isn't crashing anytime soon. Back to square one indeed. This game is so much more reserved than previously. We're not going from infected city to infected city or military bases and all of that. We are back to 1 singular house, 2 singular households with a very small cast of antagonistic characters, and it's for the better, I think. Even though this game was years after RE6, I'm sure heads have cooled since then. I think this is what the franchise needed, a step back to rework the foundation to not only remind folks of what they liked about old school Resident Evil, but also, freshen things up for a modern age. It's said that Evil Dead was the main inspiration for Resident Evil 7, and while I wouldn't consider the direction to be as batshit insane as what Sam Raimi would create decades ago, and part of what I think makes RE7 so effective is how grounded it feels, you can still clearly see Evil Dead in not only the environment, but in the bakers. All these assholes steal the show with their loud, ghoulish behavior that's one part campy, but another part grotesque and deeply disturbing. Jack, he not only hounds your ass in different parts of the house, but he takes pleasure in freaking Ethan out, fully aware of the things the infection allows him to get away with, like surviving total immolation, taking a steel beam to the chest, a bullet to the chin, doing donuts in the garage screaming I don't give a fuck with his windows down and his system up. Marguerite isn't as memorable, that being because she doesn't get as much screen time as Jack does, but when she is on screen, you don't forget it. The way she commands insects just make you wince. They can come out of her mouth and later her vagina hive. Ugh. She's screaming her ass off most of the time, berating us for not enjoying her hospitality, at one point calling Ethan, what was it again?
Fucking shitcock! Show yourself!
Like, what is that? I've never heard that insult before. What's a shitcock? They really ramped up the swearing in this, didn't they? I think it helps feed that grounded nature of the setting I was talking about earlier. Jack says motherfucker weird though.
Now look what you've done, motherfucker!
Lucas doesn't get as crazy physically speaking as his parents, but he ends up being the most dangerous with his inherent mental instability and love of booby traps. I love when you get the jump on one of his death traps because of a videotape you watched earlier, and the instant you thwart his plan, he immediately follows up with a stack of lit dynamite. Lucas is the kind of dude who has backup dynamite just in case you survive his death trap. His fate is left ambiguous in the main campaign, and it wasn't until the Chris Redfield DLC, Not a Hero, where his comeuppance is finally delivered thanks to the star's veteran. Our protagonist, Ethan, is pretty vanilla. Regrettably, I think he ends up being the worst part of the experience. Not so much in vocal delivery, because I think his voice acting is good, honestly. It's his lack of emotional attachment. The game kicks off because after thinking his girlfriend was dead for 3 years, he finally learns that she's alive and heads off to go see her, but after reuniting and experiencing all the crazy shit with Evelyn's influence and all that, Ethan responds to Mia's apparent death like a Twitch streamer.
What the fuck are you, Mia?
No, by all means, don't express yourself all at once, Ethan. And this is sadly a reoccurring thing. He's got good moments. I personally love his post-mortem retorts to the bakers whenever he finally deals with them.
Do me a favor and stay dead.
But I think more should have been done with the character to make these feel earned. As is, they come off as try-hard attempts at making Ethan feel badass. And it's like, guys, he's already a dude that managed to get his hand working again after it was chopped off in the game's intro. I get the feeling Ethan is pretty hardcore physically, but he could have shown a bit more emotional range.
Fuck.
Yeah, there we go. Now he's relatable.
Jesus, fuck.
The fastest way to describe RE7 would be that it's classic Resident Evil. I'm talking Resident Evil 1 and 2 with a first-person camera. The action has been considerably toned down, if not outright removed, barring a few select moments, but that's all they are, they're moments. Survival is of the utmost importance once more. Ammunition is limited, healing items are limited, inventory is limited, and item boxes are once again things that you have to utilize to save space and solve puzzles or obstacles that require certain keys or objects to bypass. To save your game, you need to use cassette players, though unless you're playing on a higher difficulty, you can save as many times as you want. Some things are just better left in the past, you feel me? There's no merchant to buy things, no perks to equip, and outside of your knife, melee attacks are absent, and your gun selection has been reduced to whatever you can find lying about, though I can't say I've ever been to a house that had a fucking grenade launcher on standby. It goes without saying, I think so anyway, that going from Resident Evil 6 to this game is like the biggest fucking case of whiplash. It's night and day. Do not get the idea that you can approach this like the previous over-the-shoulder games. You will get bodied so hard, so fast. This is classic Resident Evil, so you have to treat it like one. So that means picking and choosing your battles. If you don't have to fight them, then don't. Run around them, use your defensive block just right to reduce incoming damage, or find a means to disable them with something like your knife so that you don't blow too much ammo. Carefully explore your surroundings, scavenging for whatever items you can find in drawers, lockboxes, wooden crates, someone's neck cavity. It could be ammunition or chemicals that you can mix with other things to make first aid kits or stronger bullets like in Resident Evil 3. And the first person camera also means you have to consider searching high and low for things, and you'd be surprised what you can find on the underside of a trailer. You can also find these antique coins that you can spend on these bird cages that hold things like a permanent health upgrade, faster reloading, and later just a straight up fucking magnum. I do have to wonder who placed these items in these bird cages for me to eventually open. It's one of the gamier elements that I don't think blends that well into the spirit of the game, you know? I'd rather we find these items hidden throughout the area. Like, I'm the kind of guy that likes finding their magnums inside a gravesite for no fucking reason, you know? Though I do respect encouraging players to explore, and these antique coins, as well as the mysterious bobbleheads, do just that. Environmental puzzles are back, a good dose of them to boot, but they don't go overboard overboard, I think. They're nothing as extreme as some of the more infamous examples in the classic games. Now, fun little brain teasers, that's about it. Even comes with a robotic clown thing that scribbles loser on some poor dude's arm. What the fuck? Good form though. There's something for every fan of classic Resident Evil here, and modern players don't have to deal with the tank controls. That was a big turnoff for newcomers. Play your cards right, play things carefully, and you'll get those moments where you can go a little crazy with your handgun, maybe craft some enhanced bullets and go to town. Oh, the shotgun is back to being an amazing choice of weaponry. Again, you don't want to splurge the ammo, but getting a headshot on one of these molded creatures never gets tiring. I do wish there were a little more enemy variety though. There are different flavors of mold, sure, big ones, small ones, some coming out of your head, but you can count the total number of mold creatures with one hand and that's a bit disappointing. Outside of the bakers, there's little in boss fights too. The final legit encounter of this game is two bloated mold people that are taken care of with some remote bombs. The final battle against Evelyn is so heavily scripted that it's next to impossible to lose. It's a climactic moment in the story with an anticlimactic feel in gameplay. But Resident Evil 7 is a good return to form. It took some adjusting, especially after coming right out of Resident Evil 6, but classic muscle memory eventually set in, and I was enjoying myself on a level similar to the older games. That said, once you realize you're playing what's basically Resident Evil 1 in first-person mode, well then it's just a matter of you actually liking what's thrown at you, and even with modern improvements and different difficulty selects, there's a part of me that feels that if classic Resident Evil was never your thing, I don't see how a different perspective or better graphics will change your mind. If you don't like the idea of conserving ammo or shuffling through items to save on resources or solve puzzles, Resident Evil 7 might not be for you. But at least the game isn't terribly expensive nowadays, and there's extra DLC included as well. Quite a number to choose from, most being bite-sized scenarios that may grab your attention if you enjoy the novelty. Something like Jack's 55th birthday party is funny, sure, but this isn't exactly a replacement for Mercenaries, I think. The band footage was okay. I think the most significant one regarding the story is the daughter scenario. You control Zoe and get to see the Bakers before they were corrupted by Evelyn. It's not very long and light on gameplay. It's a stealth game, for once the Bakers start going crazy, you have to avoid them and escape the house. Reminds me a bit of Maniac Mansion if you ever played that. One time I managed to get caught by Marguerite, and when she does, she screams for Jack to get over here and help her detain Zoe. But when it happened here, Jack was already right next to her, and it just makes Marguerite look like she has no indoor voice.
Jack! Give me a hand here, Jack!
Right here, woman, you don't have to keep screaming at me.
Over here, Jack!
God damn, you are loud. Nightmare places you in control of this poor smuck who's found himself in the Baker residence sometime before the events of the game. You have to survive about 5 hours of in-game time amassing scrap metal to craft guns, ammunition, and booby traps in order to fend off the mold and the Bakers, effectively making it Five Nights at Freddy's if you are allowed to actually shoot the animatronics. It's a fun little distraction, there's not much more than that. The same goes for a bedroom. You're confined to a bed thanks to Marguerite, and you have to use your wits to escape, while trying not to arouse Marguerite's suspicion. My attention skyrocketed whenever I had to get back in bed and make sure nothing was out of place, and seeing Marguerite slowly examine the room just made me squeeze my controller harder. It's over in half an hour with a good eye to detail, but I liked it. Ethan must die. Alright, the name fits. 21 is just blackjack? Yeah. Just blackjack with death traps, courtesy of Lucas. It's you against this dude in a burlap sack that makes it look like Dr. Salvador has hit hard times. It's packed with a ton of macabre humor, for that it's pretty cool. I love how, despite these guys panicking their ass off given the situation, their demeanor immediately reverts back to a calm attitude when they ask for another card. But I'm not big on blackjack, so Clancy, sorry bud, but I'm gonna pass. Not a Hero and End of Zoe are the two major DLC campaigns, added after the game's initial launch. Not a Hero involves Chris Redfield tracking down Lucas Baker and putting an end to his shenanigans once and for all. Chris still has trouble keeping his crew alive, so still needs to work on that. And his physique has considerably shrunken since the last time we saw him, but no worries, just a few more steroid injections and we'll get his dick shrinking in no time. The most eyebrow-raising thing about this, though, is that Chris is now working for Umbrella, or rather, Blue Umbrella, remnants of the original corporation that wants to make amends for past actions and set things right, which Chris, for the record, does not immediately buy. I don't think anybody would. But through gritted teeth and a hell of a lot of snark, Chris is willing to give them a shot if it means saving lives from bioterrorism. I'm guessing the BSAA decided to go non-union? There's also mention of a secret organization called the Connections here that Lucas was in contact with to help enact his plans. Are they related to the family from RE6? Or is this a completely different conspiratorial group? How many of those does this franchise need? Well, that isn't resolved here, so maybe in a future game. I forget if they were even a thing in Village, so we'll find out soon enough. As a game, Not a Hero is fine. It's pretty short, so I feel the approach to Metroidvania gameplay where Chris has to get different upgrades for his suit to travel deeper into the mind is underplayed, though I like the idea. This has about as much content as those side stories from RE5, so this is by no means a separate way. It's forever my go-to comparison when regarding extra scenarios. The best thing about it is that Chris can actually do a melee follow-up when he stuns an enemy, which Ethan wish he could do, and I'm happy to say it's as cathartic as it was in RE4 and 5. but his punches simply don't compare to that of Joe Baker, central protagonist of the second DLC campaign, End of Zoe, picking up immediately after the point where we left Zoe to her doomed fate of becoming a Lassie from Final Fantasy XIII. So this is Joe Baker, brother of Jack Baker, who I should stress is not mentioned in any capacity during the main campaign. He's suddenly making a debut here, mistakenly thinking that some soldiers from Blue Umbrella are trying to harm Zoe when in reality they're trying to get her cured, but Joe's familial instincts kick in and eventually gets the soldiers killed through his dumbassery. So now Joe has to trek through the treacherous swamplands and find a means to cure Zoe on his own, and this campaign they just did not give a fuck. Your main weapon is your fist, which later you can get the power glove to make it stronger. You're spending most of the game just punching the shit out of creatures and barricades and throwing makeshift spears at alligators or other creatures. Fuck. And you're being chased by Swamp Thing through the game, who turns out to be Jack, somehow surviving a scuffle from the main story. But you can toss him around, beat the shit out of him. This is just nuts, but like Not a Hero, it's pretty short, so you don't have much time to really let things sink in. But still, it's so fucking absurd that it works. To me, it's on the same level as Tofu from Resident Evil 2, and mainly serves to give Zoe a happy ending after her depressing predicament in the main story, so that's fine. This was great to come back to. Resident Evil 7 was a great time then, it's still a great time now, but again, it is such a hard shift from the over-the-shoulder games that newer fans might be accustomed to, so you might want to practice caution on that. Maybe the remake of Resident Evil 2 or 3 might be more up your alley, or maybe the next game might be the one. We have one game left to look at before we wrap up this second visit to the mainline Resident Evil series, so I will see you guys next time with Resident Evil Village, or Resident Evil 8 Village, however you want to call it though. I'll see you guys next time. As always, thank you all for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you decide to go outside, check for mold, get vaccinated if possible, have yourselves a fantastic night, and take care.